Guys, just thought I'd do a quick little video on what I'm about to do next to the S13. This is steering column, and from factory Nissan have a rubber joint that goes here. It's for just a collapsible steering column if you have a crash or whatever. With all the stuff that I've done to mine, don't really need that anymore, so I replaced it with an alley bush probably 2 years ago. Since moving my steering rack forward for the steering angle mods and everything that I've done, I'm gonna chop this all out, extend this and put a solid bar in to gain some clearance for the downpipe and the screamer pipe for the 2J. So just going to finish that off, cut that, show you what I've cut, and be back in a minute. Well, now that that bit's done, I've got this piece chopped, that piece chopped. All I've got to do is clean it up with a grinder and then make a piece out of some metal that I've got to make the right space, get it all nice and true, and then weld it all up. But that'll be a job for another day because I'm knackered now because I picked a hacksaw to do that job, which was stupid. Right, so we're currently with Nick welding up the steering column extender. So he's figuring out a nice way to do that and make it nice and strong by chamfering the edges. So Nick's the only one I let do this because he's much better at welding than me. Yeah, so as we mentioned before, that piece is going to join onto here and take out the big sort of flexi bush, rubber bush that Nissan's originally come with. So Nick's going to figure all that out for me. So it's extended 60mm to cope with the fact that we've moved the rack forward and taken out all that big adapter piece that was on there. So fingers crossed, with any luck we'll have this done tonight, and can also get round to welding the diff, 350Z diff that we've put in the car. And I can actually do an install video on that because, you know, I made all of that work before I even started the channel. So Nick's done a couple of passes over that, fill up the V. And it's quite nice, it's actually still very hot. It does throw off a little bit because the welds are a little bit chunky, so we'll probably skim it down in the lathe just to double check that it's still square before we attach it to the actual steering column. But yeah, one shaft extended. Let's hope that it actually fits, and I've measured it right. Yep, so Nick's all done with the steering shaft. It's really hot still, but it's done a smashing job of trying to keep it as true as possible. It's never going to be 100% because it's not a machined finish, but you know, it is bloody close, if not perfect. So 60mm extended obviously gets rid of that big ugly bit that's going to restrict me in the downpipe and the wastegate. So fingers crossed we've done that run right and I've measured it right. Just unboxed the SMS inlet manifold for the 2J. So I've gone for the 12 injector option just because, you know, it was the same price, and for the sake of being able to run two sets of injectors per cylinder, it means I can buy smaller injectors, have more fuel, you know, can make it a lot safer than it could be, and it's going to be easier to map, get the drivability out of it. We've opted for a drive-by-wire adapter, so I've got to buy the throttle body for that, but you can see in there that this is absolutely stunning. Full CNC'd, full matched, bolt together. It's just a real nice bit of kit and super reasonable money. Yeah, it's just so cool. I can't wait to put my little touch to it. I'm going to end up polishing the injector rails and dropping some black into their logo so it all stands out. I'll leave this the way it is and probably drop some black in there. Might end up doing a sticker on that one instead of paint because I don't really want to touch the machining marks that are in there because they do look so nice, but we'll see. That's all at a later date. So I'm going to go and test fit this in the bay now. I'm also going to throw in the wiper motor that I painted up, and I've got the steering column behind all of them bags of sweets, and you know, because you gotta love some sweets. Yeah, got the steering column there, that's all painted up, so I should be able to get some steering and an inlet manifold back on the car this afternoon. So it should all be good. Right, so that's the steering column all in, and you can see we've gained so much space here with getting rid of the joint, the big circle joint that used to go there. So now we've got room for a 3.5 inch down pipe to come down there, and then we also have room for the wastegate to be mounted and the dump tube to head out down there, which will go either side. And then we've got a servo and a master cylinder going to be there. They're all going to be covered with Funk Motorsport heat protection, so we can stop them from melting from the heat that this is going to make. There's one modification I've got to do to this manifold, and that is to weld the EGT bungs in, because I'm having individual EGTs for everything. Yeah, so that's basically that. It's all bolted in and done. The wiper motor is also on. That's all in place. That just came off to be painted. That's still OEM. The only other thing I did get was OEM spindles, new ones, because if you own an S body, you know that they rot out clean and they just snap off. Plastic deteriorates over time. So all of that's done. They're in. So it's just a case of wiring up to the OEM stalk, which I plan to do, and then I plan to keep everything all nice and simple. Next job is inlet manifold on. Well, that's the SMS inlet manifold all on. There's a couple of things that I've got to take into consideration now that I've got that in place, and now I can start figuring out the rest of the stuff. Heater matrix pipes is going to be one of them. Not quite sure how I'm going to do that. Might have to make a custom heater matrix for it and put them through on some 90-degree fittings. Change that fitting out there, and that's a heater pipe as well, because I obviously want it to have heating and everything, because we are in the UK, and I am planning to drive this car in the winter, so just going to take a drive. Obviously I've got no injectors at the moment, so I can't set the heights of the rails or anything like that, but I am going to have to take into consideration this end. It may be that I have to shorten this rail enough to get a fitting on, because the VVT banjo's got to go in there, and that's obviously just gonna collide with that straight away. The throttle body itself is going to be about that long, so it's just going to be a case of washing the V-band. Definitely going to have to move the radiator forward, so I'm not too worried about that. That's going to come and be sort of in this gap, so that won't be in the way at all. And then Bosch 3-inch pipe down there, straight out into the intercooler that we're going to make. But yeah, inlet manifold, it's lovely, it's massive, it's just what this engine bay needed. Look at the size of it, like, it's a monster. Just figuring out how I'm going to run fuel lines and things. So I may have to shorten the rails. Obviously they make it for a 2J, just sort of in a super application, I guess, whereas this, it was never destined to be in an S13, never destined to be this far back. So, you know, this is what happens when you modify cars and you build stuff. You've got to work around certain problems that isn't specifically the builder's fault. You know, they've put an excellent manifold on the market. You know, they give you loads of options when you want to spec it up. I dealt with these guys. They were very patient with me and all the questions I asked. Obviously it's a big investment, but it's not the biggest investment you can make into an inlet manifold. It's definitely a lot cheaper than the likes of the Plasma Mans and the Hypertunes and things like that. And yeah, definitely going to be suited to my application, that's for sure. One thing I have seen a video on lately is the DRIFT.HQ. They've done an assembly video of a 2J, and they do a nice GE billet water neck which takes it out to an AN20, which is basically what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have their one, then it stops it from pointing up, I can point it down, and then I can just sort of have a 45 fitting on it and chuck it straight over to the radiator when I redo that. yeah, so it's going to be a case of just slowly but surely modifying everything we've got to modify to suit around everything else. And yeah, so next big purchase for me is going to be the throttle body. Spit your words out. And then I can finally decide on a place and rotation for the turbo to be. I'm thinking it's going to be roughly where it is now, maybe aimed over a little bit more like that, just to allow for the downpipe to kink over as far as possible. But again, you know, it's going to be a trial and error thing. I'm not going to be able to tell straight away where the best place is for it, because originally I did want to have it as square to the engine bay as possible, but then it doesn't leave me much room for any activities alongside it, but it does make it look nice and symmetrical. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do. You know, I've got all the options in the world. Obviously it's not clocked or anything yet. To clock it, it's just going to be a case of knocking these bolts off and just clocking the inlet side, because if it was clocked correctly like that, you know. I've also got to take in consideration where the drain is going to come through and how we're going to get it down to there. I'm leaning more towards putting the drain out through this hole here and putting like a 45 line on there and doing like a solid-ish line, you know, so there's nothing gonna split or rub on the water manifold, and it's all gonna be heat protected and everything else, because you know heat's gonna be one of the biggest factors with this car. It's gonna produce a lot of it, and I've got to find a way to get it out of this bay. S13s do suffer with heat soak quite dramatically towards the back of the bay. So when I did all the work to the bay, I chose to leave the little corner pieces out just to try and funnel some airflow out of the bay. You know, a lot of my friends have come up with some wacky ideas to put mini fans on there, and when the big fans come on, those fans come on and draw the heat through and draw it out. But you know, I'm hoping the cooling package that I spec up for this is going to be more than capable of keeping this thing cool. It's just going to be exhaust temps that I need to worry about, and I don't think we're going to have too much trouble with inlet temps. I've got this huge plenum, and I'm going to have a big intercooler. Might try something new with it, you know. It's all going to be trial and error with this until it's done and on the road. But yeah, so recap of today. Inlet manifold arrived this morning, 3 days from when they told me it shipped. These guys absolutely smashed it. They told me 3 weeks when I first inquired and first transferred them the money, and you know, 2 weeks later it's bolted on the car. It's crazy how efficient it is. They sent me videos of it being machined. They kept me up to date every bit of the way. So big shout out to sms.cnc on Instagram. I'll put their name somewhere in the video over that clip, I guess. And then yeah, so I also did steering column. That's now in with the big bush gone. Big shout out to Nick for welding that up for me, because I definitely wasn't brave enough to do that one on my own. Just gave it a lick of paint. Matches my steering wheel. I've had this steering wheel for years, so thought I'd just match it with that. It's the only bit of sparkle on black we're going to see on this car. Everything else is solid black and gloss, apart from the sparkle and the silver. And the wiper motor is in. I can kind of just keep cracking on with little bits and fiddling with bits, saving up some more money, you know, buy a throttle body. I can then start to make boost pipes when I get the intercooler finished, or started I should say, along with the radiator. Move this front beam out of the way and make one of them up that works better for my needs. That's just going to be a case of a bit of snipping on this bar, a bit of snipping on this, and I'm hoping I can kind of just square this off and bring this radiator into this spot here, which would then give me enough room for all the activities that's going to happen there, and a nice big fan on the front to blow through, so we're drawing the cold air through the radiator instead of drawing the hot air into the bay. We're pushing it all through, so hopefully that works better. You know, it's a given that. Yeah, so I'll just film a recap like this. I think it'll be better for you and better for me, because I can genuinely not really see anything right now, it's so bright. But Inlet manifold is on. Shout out to SMS for that, at Smart Machining Solutions, just to put it out there. Shout out to Circ Motorsport for the help on all the parts that they've provided, and all the knowledge, and shout out to Huxley Motorsport for all the fab work on the cage, the bash bars, the tubs, and then, you know, all the many hours he spent talking to me about roll cages and specs and just the different ideas I had for the car and making things happen the way it happened. I want you to go and like, comment, subscribe on this video, Mark's video, and the Instagrams of all three companies that have helped me get this far.